So now that we've got an idea of how light works, what does this mean for plants? Well, if you think about it, when light strikes the green leaves of a plant, most of the green part of the spectrum is reflected, most of the other colors of light are absorbed. What allows this to happen is a special pigment inside the chloroplasts of the cell. If you remember, chloroplasts are those structures within the cell where photosynthesis actually occurs, and that special pigment is called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the most abundant pigment in most plants. That's why the majority of plants are green in color, because chlorophyll reflects green and it tends to absorb red and blue light, and that's what it's going to use and harness for that photosynthetic process. In addition to chlorophyll, a lot of plants also have accessory pigments. Let's talk about those. Now, in addition to chlorophyll, most plants also have some accessory pigments. Let's talk about accessory pigments here in just a second. Accessory pigments are secondary pigments in addition to chlorophyll that are found inside a plant, also a lot of times in the chloroplasts. These ones are going to absorb some different colors. They tend to also absorb green. They don't reflect as much green, and it just gives some different levels of energy. The colors they do tend to reflect, depending on the pigment, some of them are going to reflect yellow, some reflect orange, and some are going to reflect red. Their color is usually masked by the chlorophyll. During the year, there's so much chlorophyll, all you're going to see really is that green. However, in a lot of plants, later in the year, the chlorophyll starts to break down as temperatures get cooler, and we get a pretty exciting process happening. And there it is. Even though we don't get this as much in Texas, in areas where it gets a little bit cooler or a little bit faster and they have different species of trees, as the temperature cools down, plants start to break down the chlorophyll that's in their cells. They get ready to go into a dormancy phase where they're not going to be growing as much and they don't need as much photosynthesis. As that chlorophyll breaks down, we're able to see the accessory pigments for the first time. Those yellows, reds, and orange that were always there, but now we can see them, and that gives us our brilliant fall colors. Now we understand how light works and how light works when it hits a green leaf. But why is this important? The big keywords here is that light equals energy. Okay, remember again, you feel warm when the sun hits you, you can see things. Light is energy, and photosynthesis is a process that requires energy. It begins when light strikes a leaf and some energy of that light is absorbed. That energy can then be used to power photosynthesis. So, remembering that photosynthesis is what allows plants to make their own food, to make their own energy, let's take a closer look at how that process actually works. The first thing we need to think about in photosynthesis is what else does a plant need? We know they have the light energy at this point, but what's going to have to go into the process? You can't make something out of nothing. I can't make a recipe without ingredients. What is the plant going to actually need to produce this sugar, in addition to the light energy we've already talked about? And here they are. Plants use carbon dioxide gas and water as raw materials for photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, plants use the energy absorbed by the chlorophyll to power a series of complex chemical reactions. In these reactions, carbon dioxide from the air and water they've gotten from the soil combine to produce sugar, a type of carbohydrate they can use for energy. We're going to talk about what else is produced, but what I want you to think about is by getting carbon dioxide and water, it's like having a whole series of Legos. The energy from the sunlight is going to allow that plant to take those Legos apart and build a new structure. In this case, the new structure is going to be sugar. So let's talk about, once you get all those pieces taken apart, what are we going to be able to build? And the answer is, as we've already said, sugar. Sugar, sugar, sugar is the most important thing. That's what the plant is trying to produce. That's what the plant wants to produce. You're making energy that the plant can then use to carry out all its processes. However, when you get all those Legos taken apart and you put them back together, in this case in sugar, there's going to be a few leftover Legos. In this case, it's oxygen molecules. Because we have those few leftover oxygen molecules, we end up with oxygen gas being produced as a waste product. Now, that waste product isn't required at that point by the plants, but it is used by all living things on our planet. All of the oxygen in our atmosphere comes from plants and algae that go through photosynthesis. It's really important, so we're definitely glad they do it. So say thanks the next time you see a nice big plant. Now that we've talked about this whole process of photosynthesis, we're going to go ahead and sum it up in what we call a chemical equation. Let's take a look at that. One way that scientists describe chemical reactions is to write equations. A chemical equation shows the raw materials and the products of a reaction. The many chemical reactions of photosynthesis, because there's quite a few, can be summarized in one big equation, and that's what we've got pictured here. You're seeing carbon dioxide and water combining to produce sugar and oxygen. Now, the light energy isn't actually considered a material because it's not a thing, but it is the energy that powers the process. I can put carbon dioxide and water together all I want, and without that energy, they're not going to magically rearrange themselves into sugar and oxygen molecules. This right here, however, is the heart of photosynthesis. It's what it is. The sugar molecule is written as C6H12O6, and that's just a type of sugar called glucose that's used by all plants. And that pretty much sums up photosynthesis. So now you've learned about what white light is, what the visible spectrum is, how light works, how we see things, how light affects plants, and why that light is so important to all living things on our planet because it allows plants to begin that food chain, making their own energy. Hope you guys learned a lot today. Have fun finishing the rest of Distance Learning Day, and I'll see you back at school. Bye, guys.